USEA Dressage Test Review with Valerie Swygert, a lovely lady who likes to sit into your judge's stand, who watches all your tests. We are here to learn and see what new is happening this year. So,
do we have any questions, or do you just want me to talk about tests?
Let's just jump into it. We have 6 people watching, so okay. It's just kind of getting into it, explaining. Because how don't they go like a routine of where it's like every few years they update the dressage test, correct?
Every 4 years, yes.
Okay. And is it usually an overhaul, or is it kind of like just a few things they change?
Hard question to answer. If there's a major problem in a test, like, no one seems to be able to successfully pull off a movement, or judges get together and have strong feelings about how something is being asked to be ridden, they take that feedback into consideration when they rewrite the tests. To be honest, a big thing with the eventing tests is trying to keep the time down, because time is money. They want to fit as many riders in as possible, especially on these one-day horse trials. The tests, we need to see enough that we can fairly assess the horse's training on the flat, but they want to do it in minimal time. So, the tests compared to the straight dressage tests, which are in a longer arena, can often feel, a bit rushed, or in many ways, these tests are more difficult, because if you only have 40 meter arena to show complete stretch over the free walk, say over the diagonal, you better hope your horse stretches as soon as you ask. Because you don't have as much time to develop the frame that you want, or whatnot. But the time is a big thing, and I know competitors aren't really excited when the second they present themselves to the arena, we beep the horn, because everybody likes to have time to go around the outside of the arena, and you don't have to go before your ride time, but very often the timing is so tight that they just haven't even allowed time for one rider to leave and another rider to do a whole lap. I don't have a choice but to ring the bell in order to stay on time. So my apologies to anybody that I've done that to. I would love for it to be different, but I have to stay on time.
Yeah, totally get it. I know it's kind of, you always hear that you have the plenty of time, but then you get in and you're just like, oh geez, and you're like rushing in. But I mean, from the event organizer side, just from doing the FRC shows, I totally get it. I mean, you have so many people you're trying to see during a day, and you're trying to get them out in and out as quickly as possible.
It's honestly, it's just mainly sticking to the schedule that I'm given. Some shows allow more time because they want me to write more on the test, or they want me to verbally talk to somebody. It really isn't about wanting to rush them in and out. It's that if your ride time is 12 o'clock and it's 12 o'clock, I have to ring the bell. I can't, if I gave everyone time to do a loop, everyone would end up adding, say, 45 seconds to the day, and after 50 riders, that's an hour. And then we're an hour off schedule, and and that messes up cross country and show jumping, and so I have to stay on time.
And that was one thing I think I read, Valerie, that all the tests, it's a 4-minute max? Is that what they were trying to do this year with the test, was to bring the optimal time to 4 minutes?
To be honest, I can't verify the 4 minutes, but I do know there was a lot about the time. I'm not on the test writing committee, so I didn't really pay attention to what that time was, but I do know it was a big part of the test rewrites was about making the time shorter. For the first time ever, as far as I know, prelim B is now in a small arena.
Oh.
And I'm gonna pull up prelim C and see if it's in. I haven't even judged prelim C yet.
So aren't there more test options this year than there have been in past? Because a couple of ones have added a test C when they just had like A's and B's.
Yeah, prelim is one, and I'm looking at that, and so prelim C is in a large arena, but the time is still 4 minutes and 30 seconds, which is, boy, you better be riding forward. I guess there are no time penalties, but it's going to be hard to stay on schedule.
Yeah.
It actually, so I'm looking at the test now and the score sheet, and it says suggested to add at least 2 minutes for scheduling purposes. So they're saying the test should take 4 minutes, 30 seconds, but in scheduling, you should schedule the rides 6 minutes and 30 seconds apart.
Yeah.
So, I have some opinions about.
I know we have a lot of our shows. We have a lot of the adult amateurs and people who are just getting into eventing, and so I know the new starter test, the actual starter test is a big one for people who jumped from, they're doing the starter division, which was unrecognized, and doing intro USDF intro C. Now starter has their own test, and isn't that a recognized division now? Isn't that correct?
It is. It is a recognized division, and it is, from what I can see already, it's popular.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of starter tests to judge.
Okay. We have our first question regarding the starter test. It's a little bit, I haven't really looked at it, so it doesn't make sense to me, but I'll read it verbatim. So, okay. From Boots Piler, do you pull up your reins after F on the starter test? Do you need to worry about a diagonal on the entrance before the turn in at M?
Okay, so that's two different questions. I believe the first question she's asking, does she start to shorten the reins in the free walk?
Yes.
No. I would not. The very next movement says develop medium walk.
Yeah.
So I would wait till I was, stride out from F to start shortening my reins.
Okay.
And, hopefully it doesn't take your horse more than a couple strides to let you re-uptake the reins. I mean, if your horse is resistant and you think if you do it quickly, he's going to stop and rear and do something really naughty, then then go ahead and do it slowly, start at X, and the score is going to reflect, maintain stretch longer or something. But the ideal to get a 10, the horse really needs to stay stretching the entire diagonal, and it gives you an entire movement and score to develop medium walk. It's if you look at the way the tests are written, it's that there are little clues in there. I'm trying to pull up the the PDF. So the score, the HXF, change free reign, and the only thing that I'm judging on that score is the quality and regularity of, I'm reading the directives, quality and regularity of the walk with reach and ground cover, allowing complete freedom to stretch the neck forward and downward. I am not judging the reuptake of the reins until the next movement.
Okay.
And the next movement says between F and A, develop medium walk, which in an upper level test might say between F and A, medium walk, which would be interpreted as by F, you should be in medium walk. But because of the way that is written, it says develop medium walk. So you can be shortening your reins through that corner.
Okay.
Developing your medium walk. That is the answer to the first part of that question. The second part, do you need to worry about the diagonal?
When you come in at M.
I mean, absolutely, I'm scoring it.
Yeah.
You come in, you do a straight line, and then you should show me a short diagonal line. And actually, and then it says at M, track left, everything that happens until the next movement, which isn't until E. So all the way through the short side and all the way down to E, everything that happens affects the first score.
Yeah.
So not only do you need to show me straightness from A to X, clear diagonal line X to M, I'm going to watch, are you using your corners? Is the tempo staying the same? You know, if your horse spooks, if your horse comes off the rail, what after you pass C, even though that isn't written on there, everything that happens until the next movement starts will affect that score.
Okay. Oh, so that's the only question we've had so far on that. But I mean, I know the starter test. I mean, from what I'm looking at, because I pulled up on my phone, it looks like a mixture of the old beginner novice test and the intro C test. And I'm glad they put it in there because, I mean, it's good for people to like have something to aim towards because I'm a puddle jumper and I'm proud of it. So
yeah,
I have one to remember.
Yeah, I don't even walk over walk poles. So
yeah,
I respect people who are willing to jump. I'm surprised I'm not getting any questions on how the collective marks have changed.
my phone is being a little bit funny, so I'm trying to pull up.
Yeah, no, I don't see any more.
Does anybody have any questions about the collective marks?
Oh,
well, the reason.
Go ahead, Valerie.
I'm sorry. There's a bit of an overlap. The reason I'm asking is I used to have to give a score on gaits, impulsion, submission, rider position / effective the aids, and now there's only one collective mark for harmony of athlete and horse.
Oh.
And when the first month that I judged these tests, I hated it. I hated that I couldn't reward a fabulous mover that was tense, when it's broken down into all those different things, you can say, well, it's an 8 or 9 or a 10 mover, but maybe not relaxed over the top line. And it was more feedback, but it took more time. And so now I just come up with one number, but I think for me, that collective mark only having one number is probably dropping my overall scores a little bit.
Yeah.
because harmony is, the definition beside it says a confident partnership created by adhering to the scale of training. Well, if your horse is, we're looking at starter. If the
Yeah.
horse is green and tense, I can't give a high score on confidence for the horse.
There's not a whole lot of harmony on certain on show days for certain people.
Right. And
Me
so
included.
I feel like that was an interesting change, and I didn't like it at first. And now I've gotten lazy because it's so easy. Like, oh, I just have one thing to write. And I'll put my score, and I'll explain, okay, it wasn't a 10 because, horse appears green, some tension, some disobedience. I think I've given 8s and 8.5s.
Yeah.
But they're kind of few and far between on the greener tests to show that kind of harmony and relaxation to get that high of a score. But then, now when I'm judging schooling shows and they hand me the straight dressage test, I'm like, oh, now I have to write like 4 or 5 collectives.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes me lazy.
Yeah.
But
when you're seeing the harmony, are you able to see, the lower levels are having, some people are really, really good, or they're getting their green beans out. How have you seen that harmony reflect on riding pairs? I guess throughout the levels that you've been, that's a mixed bag question, but how have you seen a lot of harmony?
Well, because the definition beside it also says adhering to the scale of training.
Yeah.
I sometimes see a team that looks really happy together, and the horse does not seem confused by the aids, and the horse is relaxed.
Yeah.
And willing, and they look like they probably sleep in the same stall together at night, share meals, and like great partnership. But maybe the horse isn't showing much impulsion, to the point that they're not tracking up at the trot, which is like, you have to track up. It's in the rule book under the definition of working trot. So it's tough because it just says harmony, but then when you read the directive beside it, I just because you guys look really happy and confident, it's not necessarily a 10. It also has to be very correct in the basics of the training to get a 10.
Yeah.
Which means you're on the circles, you're showing bend, the tempo doesn't vary, the frame doesn't vary. The pole is the highest point in medium walk. There's clear stretch in the free walk, which, that's hard to show on a green horse.
Yeah. I totally get that. My green bean of a thoroughbred struggles on that, so our harmony may not be so harmonious this coming year. But what's new in the beginner novice test? I'll say is that not a fun one yet?
I wouldn't say it's not a fun one. There's one that I find there's a movement that it's obviously not an A. The beginner novice test A, I think is a bit difficult because it asks for the canter in the middle of the ring from a half circle.
Yeah.
And that surprised me because it's, a greener horse. Usually we rely on the corner of the arena to sort of set the horse up for success in the canter. So it surprised me that was in the test A.
Yeah, because
But-
last year, the last version, it was on test B. Because I remember doing that a couple times the last year. It threw me off, and I many times did one too many actual circles, but not test A. Yeah.
It's now in test A, and that is a point where people do go off course because you feel like you're doing two canter circles, because you start the canter on a half circle and then you get to the rail and you have to show an entire circle from that
Yeah.
rail. And I people feel like they've been cantering already for a while and they'll do the down transition half a circle early and end up with an error. So I mean, that one's really important to pay attention to the geometry with. There's one here in beginner novice test B, movement number 8. There's a lot going on for one movement. I would like to know why they made that all scored as one movement, because I'm scoring the reuptake of the reins, the quality of the walk for all the way through the short side, which this is beginner novice, so the horses are kind of green. So to expect the frame to be consistent, the tempo to be marching and steady, and then I judge the transition at F and the quality of the trot all the way to B. That's a lot for one movement. So that's sort of, the more that's in a movement, the harder it is for the rider to get a 10, because you have to do so many things really well.
Yeah.
To get a 10. So that threw me a little bit. I would love to talk to the test riding committee on why they didn't put the F transition to working trot as a separate score.
Yeah.
Because for me, it doesn't save time. My scribe ends up having to write more in one box, but in my mind, I basically give those two different scores and then average them. So if the medium walk is an 8 and the F transition is, a 5, I'm going to split the difference. And my scribe will have to write down why, lovely, steady, medium walk.
Yeah.
Resistant into trot, or, whatever happened.
Okay.
And that's also
I don't think I heard you on that one. Your connection went a little bit fuzzy. Can you hear me? I don't know what just happened. My computer decided that it needed to not be connected to the internet.
It was also confused by the large arena events and tests.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Also that way.
I'm looking now at the novice, and I hadn't opened this app before, because when I've been judging, the show managers had been giving me a clipboard with a copy of the tests.
Yeah.
But looking at this app, for some reason they have thrown in 20 by 60 on
I saw that they have on the top, at least from the USEA website, it says you can do it in a small or large arena.
Nobody wants to do that in a large arena.
No.
I mean, I would, yeah, that would be very, I mean, number one, it takes more time, but the upper level test, I think that would be an advantage, but in the lower level tests, to try to keep a beginner novice horse in free walk across a 20x60 arena, and to keep them paying attention and not start looking around, that's a lot harder.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine why they did that.
That is interesting.
Unless maybe they're gonna start using 20x60s like for championship classes. Huh. I haven't heard a peep about it.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I'm always disappointed when the new tests come out that the canter lengthenings and some of the tests, many of the tests are on a circle.
Yeah.
Because so many events start at the higher divisions in the morning and work their way down.
Mhm.
And not every event has perfectly groomed, manicured, artificial footing. So if you're on, not perfectly level grass that's got dew on it,
Yeah.
it can be a bit slick. And so the rider has to ride that conservatively, because if you really go for it, your horse is going to slip. So I've always wondered why they want that canter lengthening circle on a circle and not down a straight line.
Yeah.
That is never in straight dressage. That's never a question. You never do a canter lengthening on a circle in the straight dressage tests. So my brain just can't wrap around why the sport that is more likely to not have perfect footing asks for something that difficult.
Yeah. How have you seen the beginner novice test running so far? Have you seen, besides the weird canter transitions on test A, how have they been going? Have you seen a lot of mistakes, or have they been across the board decent?
I can't say that I've noticed much difference with the test change, other than the usual, errors from just, like, it usually takes 6 months for people to get them down pat in their head. So I keep having to correct people from wanting to do the old geometry. In December I had a lot of errors, and they would, as soon as they did something that wasn't right, I would get out and I would ask, do you know that the test changed? And the riders would say no. And I was like, well, the test changed, so go back out, learn it, we'll fit you in later.
Right.
But that's happening less and less as the season goes on. Within the body of the test, I don't think my scores have gone down, but the fact that I can only give one collective remark, probably
has that been quote unquote placing people scores lower or higher with those collective marks? Because they're not as many, you're not able to give as many extra collective marks, I guess. So what are you seeing with that?
I believe in my
with you.
I think it's lowering lowering the test switch and eventing, I should say raising the score.
Yeah.
It's making the score a little bit worse because I can't, it's just one score for harmony and adherence to the training scale. I can't reward the horse that's, you know, a really elastic mover, or the rider who, you know, the horse was absolutely just being a turkey, but the rider handled it super well. Where I could give a really high score on rider position or rider effectiveness of there's no place for me to reward that. I just like, all right, your horse was a turkey, so there wasn't great harmony, so it's not a great score.
Yeah. I bet we'll just have to see how that plays out around by the end of the year, and see when we'll have our schooling show in March, and see how the scores play out on those from the different judges we have that day, because that'll be interesting to see, knowing that background.
I would love some rider feedback on are they, do they care that the collectives aren't there anymore, or were riders really relying on those collectives to work on knowing what to improve, or are they perfectly happy with the tests as they're written now?
Yeah, I know when I haven't done anything this year yet, but from that, like, I was always making sure if my horse is a little bit of a green bean, but I got my geometry right, so like that was gonna be accurate. But like we tried our darn hardest to really show off that we could be obedient. Sometimes it was, you have a little horse on your hands. I'm like, I know that. Or it was like really willing, and it's like trying to, and they could see how much my mare was trying, but just was struggling. So I know for me personally, the harmony, we get a bit tense. So that would probably, if we hit lower than 40, I'm ecstatic. So, but that will be a big change for us this coming year, I know.
I'm trying to visualize what you're saying, and I get, I mean, that is my frustration. If you're doing everything possible as a rider, if I see during the free walk, you know, the rider reaching and giving a little scratch on the withers, you know, doing everything possible to give the horse confidence, and I mean, they aren't born made, they aren't born relaxed. It is a process, and it's a shame I can't reward a well-ridden tense horse.
Yeah.
I have stated on several tests, you know, that the horse appears green, causing tension, rider handling horse well, you know, phrasing it in a way that, okay, you're not getting an 8 or a 9 on this movement, but I don't think that it's rider induced.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, if I think the rider has a death grip on the horse and, you know, never lengthens the reins in the free walk, and you know, it appears to be, you know, frozen in fear, or just extremely rigid, or whatever in their riding, I'll phrase the collective a bit differently. You know, riders work on offering more rein to allow more stretch, and relaxing your own body to help horse gain confidence and his own relaxation. You know, so I'll just phrase it differently if I think it's rider induced.
Yeah.
I'm not always right, and
I've certainly, so
yeah. Well, I've said things like, you know, horse shows potential, and then it was going novice, and I'll find out, you know, it's an old advanced horse. Well, It looked to me like it showed potential. I
There's
guess.
potential in there somewhere.
Yeah, I guess I was right. If it ran it, but you feel kind of stupid saying that when you realize that it's a 18-year-old horse that won Rolex or something. But
Oops.
my job is just to judge what's in front of me.
Yeah. I mean, that's all you can do at that point in time.
And on that note, I just don't know any judges that really remember from one month to the next. Like, if you have a train wreck of a ride and then your next show, you're like, oh my God, I have that same judge. We don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we're just judging what's in front of us. If you come in and earn a bunch of 8s and 9s and 10s, you're going to get them no matter how bad your horse was last time we saw it.
Yeah. What are you thinking about the novice test now? Because did there used to be a novice 3-day test? Because I see there's an A, B, and a novice 3-day now. So, and I can't remember if novice ever had a 3-day test. I haven't gone above beginner novice, so I'm not the best person to ask, but
my app is not showing a novice 3-day test.
Oh.
Where are you seeing that?
USEA's website. They posted these back on, I think, just shortly ago. It's showing all the same stuff that it's under, like USEF dressage test, FEI dressage test, and then young bent horse dressage test. So I don't have the app. I'm just on USEA's website.
Oh, never mind. Let me scroll down. There is, it says 3-day.
Yeah.
5 tests. US novice. There's 2 US novice 3 days.
Oh.
There's 1 USCF training 3-day, a USCF modified 3-day, and a USCF prelim 3-day. I have not judged any of those tests. I have not judged a 3-day.
Okay.
The tests were changed, so I have absolutely no idea. Sorry.
Okay. What about, have you done any of the regular novice A and Bs?
Bunch of novices. I've done the training. I've done the prelim. Only a couple intermediates, and I have not judged the advanced yet, but probably will pretty soon because I think the bigger names that come to Aiken for the winter are gonna start showing up at the shows.
Yeah. How does?
Oh, I'm
You
sorry,
go, Sarah.
Erin.
No, you go, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm curious on the novice test B, the skill 3, where you go from the working trot and then back to walk for 4 to 6 steps and then back into the trot. That was, I haven't gotten higher than novice, so that one was a new one for me. Do you have any advice on how to ride that? Or are you really counting the 4 to 6 steps?
Yes. We are absolutely counting those steps. I can't say that movement seems to have caused any trouble with anybody. I just find it a little odd, because they've, the medium walk is, why is my phone not scrolling now? The medium walk and the free walk is asked for later in the test, so I guess that's just an obedience question. When the whole point was to speed these tests up, that seems to be a movement that adds time, that I don't know that it gives me as a judge greater insight into your horse's training. But the test writers must feel differently, that that's feedback that we need to come up with our harmony score.
This almost looks like that part where they, I mean, this is a USDF in first level 1 where they make you do a simple change, like a simple change across the diagonal from like a left lead to right lead, and they want you to do it right over X, and it's supposed to be very straight, but I know it's different for different ones, but that's what it seems like it is, but just walk. And when counting those walk strides, how do you count those? Like, what footfalls do you count?
Every time the shoulder moves forward.
Okay, so like left and right, or just like one every left step?
I would say every left step. That in that test, they're actually going in the direction where it's easier for me to see the right front leg.
Yeah.
So I'm counting the right front leg.
Okay.
Interestingly, I haven't seen a lot of jigging in that movement.
Yeah.
Which, if I read the test before I saw it ridden, I would have thought, ooh, 3-day horses are, they're a little more hot, they're a little more anticipatory, a little more forward thinking, like that's going to cause some horses that are jigging or coming against the hand, and I really haven't seen that. I have not seen that movement be a problem.
Okay.
I'm a stickler for the pole needing to be the highest point in medium walk. So I'm certainly going to comment and have commented on that, because the definition of medium walk in the rule book, the pole should be the highest point. So
Okay.
I say that ad nauseum when I'm judging the medium walk.
Yeah.
At all the levels. Pole should be highest point. Pole should be highest point.
Yeah.
But I'm less. You can still get a good solid 7 on a lower level test. It's going to bother me more the higher up the levels you go. In a starter test, I'm going to be much more lenient than an intermediate or a prelim test.
Yeah.
I'm also seeing on novice A 10-meter circle. Has that been introduced in novice before, or is this the first time that they're doing a 10-meter in novice?
Novice A does not have a 10-meter circle.
I guess it's half circle, right? 10 meters on 15.
Right before the final halt and salute.
Oh, so you're coming off the side. I see. You're making your turn early is what they're saying.
Yeah, that's just the same as if you went down the long side and turned down center line. You would be technically from that corner to X be doing a 10-meter half circle.
Okay, so, I see.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there is a half circle. I like that they specified it's a half circle, because if it just said, B to X, turn onto center line, you would see that ridden like a box, like a 90-degree turn to a 90-degree turn.
Yeah.
So that was smart that they wrote it that way. The feedback I've gotten the most on is in that novice test A, the free walk being on 2 diagonals. you have to, the free walk should look exactly the same, like every step, same stretch, same overstride. And it's hard to get to the rail and change direction without losing some of the stretch, or the horse shortening their strides a little bit, or, kind of thinking, oh, something's changing. So that's a difficult movement to get a really high score on, because the horse naturally, when you get to E, is you have to turn them onto a new diagonal, and most horses are gonna lose a little bit of stretch and a little bit of relaxation as they're waiting for you to ask them the next thing. So I would say that not a lot of riders love that.
Yeah. So is that kind of like coming from F to E? So it's just kind of like they do like almost very quick. That's in my head. It's so much more complicated than it actually is.
It's just 2 half diagonals.
Oh, okay. So it's like you get to a point at E and then you change to go to M. So from like F to E, then E to M.
Right.
Okay. In my head, that was like outer space. So it's like this is not connecting. And so now it does. It's almost like a serpentine, but more straight and more accurate.
Yes, the issue is that when the horse, when you ride F to E, at E, you have to communicate with the horse. You have to do something with the reins and your body to tell the horse where to go next.
Yeah.
And so by nature, the horse should lift its head a little bit and, flick an ear back and kind of, I mean, it's very hard to ride that movement and keep the horse in the same stretch and the same overstep as you change the diagonal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah.
I have to say, unless there's a lot of resistance, I kind of ignore a little bit of loss of stretch at E in that movement, because I don't think a horse can help it. Just a tip, if you're trotting a diagonal line, don't change diagonals at X. Do it before the diagonal, like at the beginning of the diagonal line or at the ends, because when you stop posting for that second to change diagonals, it serves as a half halt, and you usually see a little stutter in the tempo, because as you sit a beat, the horse is like, oh, something's changing.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious when I'm sitting at C and that little tiny stutter happens at X, versus if you wait till the end, it's not so obvious to me when you change your diagonal that it half halts the horse a little bit. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
The serpentine, really, people need to look at the geometry on that. And novice, the horse should be parallel to the short side. It's 2 half circles, and over X, they should be parallel for one stride. They should be parallel to the short side.
Okay.
So tail is aligned with B, face is aligned with E for one there are serpentines and eventing tests that do not want you to be parallel as you change. There's an upper level test where you do a serpentine from quarter line to quarter line.
Mm-hmm.
And the if you look at the geometry that it's on the app. I don't know if it's on the website, but the app is free. At least it is now. Probably won't be for long, but there's a diagonal. A diagram for every movement. If you look at the geometry in that loop, it is 2 half circles.
From quarter line to quarter line.
No, in the novice, it's the full arena.
Okay.
So be sure to be parallel to the short sides. In that, I'm gonna pull up.
What app are you on? Because I know I've heard of it, but I've never been on it. What app are you seeing all this stuff on? Is it free for riders or just free for judges?
It's free for anybody. And it says at the top, free until August 17th, 2022. So I guess after that, they're going to start charging for it, but it is called USEA Test Pro.
Looks like it's just on Apple Store right now.
It is available for Android.
Okay.
I know this because I was trying to figure out how to download that app on this ancient little laptop that I had, because I thought I wasn't going to be able to stay on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to get it to download to just a computer.
Yeah.
And that was beyond my technical capacity.
I found it. I had to type in Test Pro first, Aaron. I don't know if that helps you at all.
And Test Pro is all one word, I think.
Yeah.
But that's handy because it has the diagrams. When you pull up the test, at the top you can click PDF, and it will show you the judge's score sheet, like exactly what you would get back at a test.
Mm-hmm.
But to learn the test, it shows you the geometry, exactly where you should be in every movement. So that's quite handy.
Yeah.
And the lowest scoring movement, I would say in general, is the lack of stretch in the trot circle. Which, like in novice A, is movement 14. Circle right, 20 meters rising trot, allowing the horse to stretch forward down. I've seen some super tests where I'm like, 8, 8.5, 8, 8, 8. And then for some reason we get to 14 and I'm like, minimal 5.0 does not stretch. That seems to be something that people need to figure out how to ride. Sometimes the rider is offering and the horse doesn't stretch, but it's super frustrating when I think it's there and the rider just doesn't ever offer any reins.
Yeah.
And I just want to get out of my car and go, it's right there. You just have to give him the reins. He'll stretch.
Go for it.
Yeah,
you can do it.
You can do it.
I do like how they put the the more stretchy things down into the lower levels. I appreciate that. My horse can't do anything tight and on the bend and on the bit, but man, she can stretch. So that's the one thing we have going for us.
It's a huge part of the horse's training. If the horse doesn't trust your hand to seek it in the stretch, in the free walk or the stretchy circle, that's a huge, I don't want to say red flag because I don't want to be insulting to anybody, but there is something wrong with the connection.
Yeah.
And that if your horse does not seek your hand in the stretch circle, there's a hole in your training, and you need to not move up until you figure out why your horse doesn't reach.
Yeah.
If it's because, they ran the Derby 2 weeks prior and they just don't know, that's one thing. But if you've been working on doing dressage for 6 months and your horse doesn't reach down on a stretch circle, I would say you need a trainer to help you with that, because it's very difficult to train a horse up the levels if they don't have that trust in your hand and that willingness to give you their body like that.
It almost kind of calls you out if you've been using too many gadgets or not, and your horse just knows to be on the bend, or if it just really should really go forward and find your hands. Because, I mean,
yep,
everyone's kind of guilty of using a gadget or two once in a while, but you can put a Band-Aid on it, but it won't always fix it. So, I mean, that just kind of really cements in me like, hey, you can't just go around in a frame all the time. Your horse has to show that it can actually do something else that a gadget can't tell them to do. So I like that aspect of it's helping to create better riders and better training methods.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And that's why it's in the tests.
Yeah, I do appreciate that.
I wish more, I don't know if it's that trainers aren't telling riders or if the riders just aren't hearing it, but I see a lot of down transitions ridden just from the hand.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're going from canter to trot or trot to walk, and they just pull back.
Yeah.
And, the horse does it, but if you had, stopped posting and sat and asked with your seat for the walk, the quality of the transition would be better. There would be more engagement and more balance in the transition.
Agreed.
You can skate by at the lower levels, not having much engagement, and as long as the horse is obedient, but it's really difficult to get out of the lower levels if the horse isn't doing their transitions from the seat.
Yeah. It also kind of just shows if they're reliant on your hands, then they're not really in tune with you. They're being obedient, but they're not necessarily listening. So like, I know if I have to ask my horse, if I'm having to pull on her mouth to get her to stop, that means she's like tuned me out, pissed to the world. Like, I really having to make her stop. She's a thoroughbred, so we kind of get to those days. But she does know, like, if I slow everything down, I can usually get her to like focus back in, tune me back in, be like, okay, that's when I need to focus back again. And that kind of helps tune her back and bring her back to me so that I can actually do more things in the test. I mean, I don't know, it kind of helps for people to like learn how to ride and use the more training methods, I guess, to it than just yanking them around.
That would be the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that movement, the horse is green and the horse is getting strong.
Yeah.
And you really have no choice. Like, we're gonna blow past the letter, and it's not gonna happen if I don't pull on. And I can see that from judge. I can see the difference. But sometimes the horse doesn't appear heavy in the bridle or strong or inattentive. The rider just doesn't, they're in the up phase of still posting while they're pulling back on the reins. And that, to me, that's very clearly, and I'll just say in my comment will be, ask more from seat than hand for better balance or engagement or whatever, some word like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that differentiates, where when I use the comment against hand, the horse is being against the rider's hand. The horse is being inattentive or whatever. And I try to use words that reflect what I think is happening, and put the blame on the rider when I think it's the rider, and put the blame on the horse when I think it's the horse.
I like that. I mean, sometimes you can't help it, but sometimes your horse is doing it. And I appreciate a judge who can distinguish that.
I try. I don't know that I'm always right. I did a schooling show last Thursday, and this horse lost its freaking mind. And as long as I know the rider isn't gonna come off, like those tests can be very entertaining to judge, because it's not the usual. And like this thing, like it did a handstand, and it did, and the rider never lost her seat. And it was such, I was like, this is where this rider would get like a 9 from me, because she was doing everything in her power to put in a good test, and the horse just lost it. Honestly, I would have jumped off. Like, it bucked so hard. But she just carried on.
No big deal. Another day.
Yeah, there's no place in the collectives for me to reward that.
Yeah.
But I do see it.
Question here, and I don't know if you saw it, from Christy.
Go for it, Sarah.
It's on the prelim test. Christy Hunt asked, do you prefer to see someone sit a prelim test opposed to posting it, or does it not have an effect on your score?
It does not have an effect on my score. You should do whatever shows your horse off best. Whatever your horse goes better, you can mix it all up. There's no rule. You can sit part of a movement, post part of a movement. There are no rules on that. There was a short 4-year period where we expected you to be on the correct diagonal. They, like, after years and years and years and years of like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
A couple test phases ago in straight dressage, they're like, oh, they have to be on the correct diagonal. And now they're telling us if they're on the incorrect diagonal, point it out, but don't take points off. So, not sure the logic behind that, but for sure, some horses have some irregularities or some unevenness issues that they do move better if you don't post on the correct diagonal in one direction.
Mm-hmm.
So there was logic in not looking at diagonals, and these aren't EC classes, but it was weird that we went through that 4-year period where everyone had to be on the correct diagonal, and then they were like, no, never mind.
I've heard it go both ways. I heard like some old school trainers like, this isn't hunters, you don't have to be on the correct diagonal, and I went through a hunter phase for a while, so it's like ingrained in my brain, and it's like second nature now. But I get yelled at, and I'm like, well, shoot, and then I just do it instinctively. But
I
I'm
can't
glad.
say I can't say that I like to see a rider on the wrong diagonal, but there's not a rule violation I
Yeah,
can cite to justify knocking their score down. But to answer that rider's question, any mix of sitting and rising is fine. It should say on the in the straight dressage test, it tells you at the top that you can sit or but it's probably in the rule book that if it doesn't specify sitting, you don't have to sit, but you will not be ever penalized for sitting unless the directive says rising trot. I pretty
right above the collective
But-
marks, it says all trot work may be done rising or sitting unless stated otherwise.
okay, so in the stretch circle, it says circle I'm looking at prelim A, but it doesn't matter what the stretch circle, it always specifies rising trot.
Yeah.
So the stretch circle, I mean, that is the one movement it says that it matters, whether you're posting or not.
You better be doing.
I hear a lot that riders have been told if they can sit the trot, that it impresses the judges. And that just really there's no, I don't know where that comes from, because it's not an ec class.
Yeah.
Ride typically horses loosen their backs more and are more relaxed when you post. There are exceptions, so I'm not going to say everyone should post, but I just would pay very close attention to how supple your horse's back is, and how freely they're moving forward when you're sitting versus when you're rising, and ride the one that makes your horse look better.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
I don't think so. I was going to ask you, what are some major changes in the training test? I mean, ones that you've noted, big changes, I guess.
I'm looking through the test now. Is the canter lengthening new at training?
I'm not 100% sure. I did first level dressage, so it's a lot of it looks easy, not easy, but more familiar than what eventing would be. But
I'm not.
Canner. Yeah, I see. On test B, move 14.
it is interesting though that you lengthen the stride in a circle though.
Every eventing test does that, and that's my whole. If it's not really good, solid, consistent footing, if the horse actually tries to lengthen, you risk them slipping, injuring themselves, losing their balance. So you almost have to ride it conservatively and just go for a 6.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hard movement on a circle on wet grass.
Yeah.
I think the half circles returning to the track, which is reminiscent of the first level.
Yeah,
Everyone calls it the ice cream cone movement.
exactly.
I think that's new in the eventing tests.
Hmm.
It's not new to me because I see it all the time
Yeah.
in the other tests, but can't say that it's been an issue.
Yeah.
There's a few places that riders can get away with a lot where I can't notice. Like there's some down transitions that happen, like going away from E from E to H. I really can only tell if the horse is straight and if the change if they do the transition with obedience. I
Mhm.
can't, they may toss their head and really come above the bit, but it's hard for me to see that from C.
Yeah.
So sometimes your friend might be videoing it from the side and it may have done the transition exactly the same way coming towards me, but I scored it better going away from me because I can't penalize what I can't see.
Yeah.
So if even though the horse did the entire test with its nose in the clouds, if in a movement I can't see where the head is, I cannot hold it against the rider or the horse. So that's why sometimes the scores don't make sense when you watch the video. A lot of times if a horse is straight and pretty balanced in the halts, from the side it might not be square, but if it's not crooked and really not square, it can look very balanced from the front.
Yeah.
And so I might give it a really high score, and then somebody looks at it from the side and is like, Jesus, she gave that an 8. It's not even square behind. Well, I can't tell that from the front.
Yeah.
So those are anybody that, God bless scribes, but anybody that wants to learn how to ride a test better, it's time well spent to scribe and watch the scoring and watch the tests from that vantage point, because you learn what you really need to be thinking about in specific move. Coming up on the center line, you should be straight. That's like number one thing. Like if it's harder for me to tell if your horse isn't quite straight on the when they're on the rail, but when you're coming down center line, it's real obvious.
Yeah.
I want to get back to that question of what differences I'm seeing in the training level tests. Am seeing some geometry issues with 15 meters.
Mm-hmm.
Circles getting large, or people actually doing 10-meter circles instead of 15.
Yeah.
Where is the test that has the counter canter crossing the short diagonal? Thinking that might be. Yeah, that's intermediate. I see some accuracy issues with that. Riding that counter canter, hitting the short side at the correct point and maintaining the canter down the short side until you're supposed to do a simple change. And in the intermediate test, any test that has a halt rein back, you need to establish immobility. It does not have to be 3 seconds, but you have to show immobility. There's there's a score for the halt. And
Yeah.
if you just transition down and immediately go backwards, I haven't seen a halt. So I can't score it very well.
Yeah.
So that's an accuracy issue I see quite a lot. And
For the halt and rein back, if they don't halt fully, would that be an incomplete move before they backed up?
well, some of the tests, it's scored separately. You score the halts and then you score the rein back.
Mm-hmm.
So if you didn't halt, you might get a bad score on the halt if you weren't immobile. But if the rein back steps were good, I can still give you a good score on the rein back.
Yeah.
If it's scored all together, I score it as 2 movements and average the difference.
Okay.
A lot of eventers seem to struggle with shoulder in.
Yeah.
That came out wrong. I said a lot of eventers. I see the same thing at second level with straight dressage riders. When shoulder in is first asked for, that's tricky to figure out how to ride it in the show arena, like the exact angle and bend that you should have for a quote technically correct shoulder in a test.
Yeah.
People tend to struggle with that a little bit. Though I see a lot of really good travers. And I love that eventers tend to really go for it in the mediums.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're like, I don't care if I get run away with, you know, I'm gonna kick.
Might as well.
And I love that boldness.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very marked difference between straight dressage riders and eventers.
Yeah.
Eventers are very comfortable going forward, and I'll be honest, I'm very much DQ. Like I love collection.
Yeah.
The medium, I'm like, oh, please come back, please don't do anything naughty.
Yeah.
But as a judge, I love to see a boldly ridden medium.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather see a boldly ridden medium with some against the hand at the end than somebody barely show me any difference.
Yeah. Rather have too much than not enough.
Yeah. Just if you go for it and the medium is really good, I'm thinking 8 or 9, and then the down transition is against the hand, you're probably going to get a 7. Whereas, depending on how against the hand, I mean, if they, depending on the degree of resistance. Whereas, if I don't see any difference in the length of strides, you could be in the 4 to 5 category.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's just, minimal difference, you're at a 6. So you're pretty much always better off going for it and showing the boldness.
I agree. I like judges who reward that going for it. I mean, bummer that the collective marks aren't there anymore to show how much you appreciate it, but I like hearing that from a judge's perspective.
I'll usually write it in the in the bottom under the collective remarks, I'll comment boldly ridden or love the energy. I'll say something to let them know that I acknowledge the willingness to take a risk.
Well, sweet.
But in general, I think the basics that we're looking for haven't changed.
Yeah.
Been some very interesting changes in attire.
Yeah. Have you seen a lot of crazy show coats yet?
Oh my God. I've been seeing them.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I mean, it's if it's not a rule violation,
Yeah.
I don't care. If it makes you happy to have purple stirrups and purple brow bands and purple helmets and purple breeches, I really don't care. I'm judging your training and your horse, and go enjoy your purple.
Yeah.
I just some of it is, I think people need to video themselves in what they're wearing.
Yeah.
To does this complement you and the horse? There's a fad right now with people doing those cuffs at the top of the boots.
Oh yeah.
And like the whole point of paying all that extra money for the Spanish cut that's really high, do you know what I'm talking about? Like that makes
the
the boots
stiff dressage
really tall.
boot. Yeah.
Yeah, where they almost come above the knee.
Yeah.
On the outside. The whole point is to create the image of a really long leg. And if the whole boot is black, that image is created. But if you take the top 6 inches of your boot and make it gray or white crocodile leather, you have made your leg look 6 inches shorter.
Yeah.
It's fun for schooling, and if you want to show in it, it's legal.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish people would think about the aesthetics and what it does to the overall picture, because it does make your leg look shorter. Just like if you put bling on something, it draws the judge's eye to it. Not a good idea. If your hands aren't steady, I wouldn't put sparkly gloves on. If your heels aren't steady, I wouldn't put sparkly spurs on.
The matchy can only go so far. Is there any other new 2020 or 2022 stuff that you've seen? Like the tire, the test. I know we had a bunch of stuff that kind of brought new things in for this year. Have you seen any of that you've kind of appreciated, that you haven't loved, or that what you wish riders would know about it?
I have mainly been judging schooling shows.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as attire goes, since the new tests have come out, I haven't done enough recognized to have very strong opinions. And some of the changes that they made are very dressage specific, so I won't get into that because that's not what this Zoom thing is about. But they've done some things with the EC classes to make it more clear for the judges, but that doesn't affect the eventing riders.
I
mean, I guess just in general, I would like all riders to know that we really are rooting for you when we're judging you. Nobody likes to give low scores. That's no fun. We want to see active, happy horses, happy riders. We want to give high scores.
Yeah.
We're not looking at you like, what can we find wrong today? We really are rooting for you.
Well, that's appreciated. I appreciate that. Sometimes you're having a not so good day and you go through warm up with a not the horse you want to be riding, and then you go in the arena and you just feel like dump. And so just to kind of know positive intent is coming from the judges, and they want to see you do good, but they unfortunately can only judge what they see. So
yeah, and we know, I mean, most of it, I guess there's some older judges that didn't have to do a whole lot of riding to get their judge's card, but most of us have been in your shoes. Like you've nailed the test at home. Your horse is like, I know how to go on the bit. I can do this movement. This is cupcakes. And you get to a show and you go down center line and they're like, bit? What bit? What? I've never cantered on my right lead before in my life. what are you asking me to do? And I sit there and I judge that. And I know the feeling. Like I know, like you just want to go. Really? I paid money for this 5 minutes. Can you just not be obstinate for 5 minutes?
Yes.
But yes, I'm judging the movement, but I'm not judging you as a trainer or rider because your horse is having a bad 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It happens to everybody.
Well, I know I appreciate that. Sarah, do you have any other questions?
I don't. Thank you.
Say.
This has been very helpful.
Yes, we so appreciate your time.
I'm always available on Facebook Messenger or, my email, Valerie@jasminefarm.com. My phone number is, I think if you Google my name, you can find my phone number on my website. I am always happy to answer questions for people regarding the tests, regarding, is this legal? Is that legal?
Yeah.
We work for the USEF and you pay for your memberships and we are here to serve you. So let us do that.
Well, we appreciate it, and we appreciate your time for spending with us on this Tuesday afternoon. Hopefully we'll see how things go this year. We have our first schooling show coming up in about a month now on the March 12th. So we'll see what things come in then, and we'll see how everything goes by the end of the year. So hopefully everything will go smoothly and everybody will know their tests and they'll figure them out. And by the time they come down center line, they at least know a few of the changes. So
I think they're all going to do great.
Yes. Thank you, Valerie, for hanging out with us.
Anytime. Thanks for hosting me.
Of course.
Okay.
Y'all
have a good night.
For tuning in this evening. We will see you all soon and hope you have a great night.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, friends.